Good morning, friends, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon when you're watching this. It is Karynjean, and welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody is doing well. What I'm doing here is gathering stuff to make a thinking of you card for a friend whose father recently died. It's one of my favorite cards that I've made in the past, and I thought I had some in my stash, but I could not find any. The paper that I'm using is Bristol White Smooth, Strathmore Smooth. As you see here, I'm also using a stencil, a brick wall stencil, and I'll be using that stamp of the tree as well. And also, I'll be using this here stencil and mask from Simon Hurley. I use this frequently as well, and it gives you the mountains and the sun or moon or whatever, and grass, and so I like that one as well. And I'll also be using my little birds. Whenever I see these, I always think of the story Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I did grow up in the 1970s, and that book was very impactful on my family and me. It's a lovely story about freedom and just following your own path. So, a bit about what the 70s were like, I guess. So, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get this brick wall stencil down to... hear me fussing with it. The tape I'm using is the scrapbook.com mint tape, which is a very, very low-tack tape. Quite honestly, it is not my favorite tape. It is very low-tack, and for me, sometimes I think it's a little bit too low-tack because I frequently have difficulties keeping it down. It doesn't always stick down, and it slips away and gives me grief at times. But I have it, so I'll be using it. I did see on somebody else's channel, I don't remember whose channel it was, they used a different tape, a yellow tape, and I found it at Office Supply, I think, online for the lowest price. I forget the name of it though, so I do want to try that. The ink here that I'm going to be using is Distress Oxide Weathered Wood because I want that gray look. I don't want these bricks to be red. I want them to be gray because it's kind of a gray kind of mood. I'll also be using Distress Oxide Mold Lawn and Tumbled Glass. I do love the Simon Hurley inks, but they're just a little bit too vibrant and bright for this type of card, so that's why I'm going with the Distress Oxide. What I did there was I tapped off some excess on the scrap piece of paper and came in from the side there. Now I'm not going for I'm going for a smooth blend. What I'm not going for is a solid blend. I want some lighter spots and some darker spots for the brick wall, and also for when I do the sky stuff. What I'm going to be doing here is a brick wall with grass on the bottom, a tree off to the side, cloudy sky, and the birds flying. Yeah, so there's our brick wall. Got a little bit of gray on the edge there, but that's not going to be too much of an issue for me. We just go with these things. And the next thing I'm going to be doing, I believe here, is using the Simon Hurley mask, is putting the grass down. And I do fuss with this for a couple of minutes, making sure it's where I want it. What's nice about this mask is that this is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card front that I'm going to be using here, and it does go across the whole thing, so it's made for card making. Of course, if you have something bigger, you could just move it along. No worries. And I'm back. I had to step away and get the Mowed Lawn ink. I had forgotten to grab it while I was getting the other inks that I wanted. So again, tapping it off. Now this I do want heavier. I do want this to be a bit more of a solid to cover those bricks a little bit. So I am using a stronger hand in putting this down. As you can see how heavy that ink is down there on the scrap piece of paper. Trying to get it all up in those little grass bits, those little pointy places. And let's pull that away and see what we have. It's coming along nicely thus far. I'm liking it. Now the next thing I'm going to be doing is using the Simon Hurley, the same masking stencil, to make some clouds, and I'm getting the tumbled glass ink there that I need in order to do that. And I'm also having trouble over on the left getting into my top drawer there to get out different low-tack tape. Here I have a roll of Hefty Doodle, which is wide. You can use anything to cover and mask off things. You can use post-it notes. You can just use a regular piece of paper if you want. I like the idea, though, of using a low-tack tape or post-it, something like that, so that because it sticks down. So I'm putting it right over the top of that brick wall that I made. And now I'm going to be making the sky. I will say ahead of time that this sky did not come out as nice as I like it. I don't know if that's even what I'm trying to say. In the past, the sky is a bit heavier than you'll see at the end. It's a bit heavier than what I would normally like. Now again, because it's the sky, I'm not really looking for, I don't want a solid blend. It needs to be darker and lighter in different spots, right? You don't want it all over the same. And so as you can see, the edge of that stencil there is supposed to be like cloud, so that's what I'm using to just go around it. See there, I caught a bit of the a bit of the stars that are on the stencil as well. I'm not concerned about that because when I put the birds down, I can cover that up if I can't blend it out a little bit. So, but as you see, the sky is already kind of looking very cloudy, which is fine, and the card came out lovely at the end. It's just a little bit more clouds than I really was originally thinking in my brain, but it's perfectly fine. I like watching it come together. So I'm using a few different things here from my stash. Obviously a Simon Hurley mask. I don't know, I'm sure there are lots of other ways you can do clouds. I also have a cloud, couple of different cloud dies to use, and you could do that as well. You can, if you had like cloud dies, you can just make the background the blue sky or a gray sky even. And then depending upon what type of paper you have, or if you wanted to blend out some kind of paper and then use like the cloud die cut to make the clouds. I like this. I do like the way this looks though. It's a very cloudy sky, but it's also a very blue sky, right? So yeah, and then at the bottom here, I just wanted to blend it out some blue. I did not necessarily want the clouds coming all the way down to the horizon line of the brick wall. Right. So I'm just gently picking up the excess that I have on the glass mat there and putting it through. And there's our background almost done. Next we have to do the tree. Okay, I've cleaned up the mess I made thus far, and now I'm getting ready to put the tree down. So once again, I'm masking off the brick wall. As you see, I have the tree stencil there. Not stencil, excuse me, stamp. And I do like that stamp set because you can make a lot of different backgrounds with it, because it came with the fence posts and pieces and different things like that. It had some birds on it, I think, as well. So I'm inking that up with my VersaFine Onyx Black. I always make a mess on the acrylic blocks when I'm inking. But I've also learned to make sure I wipe it off before I actually start stamping. Otherwise, sometimes I get a really big mess. And I'm just going to stamp this off. I'm not going to stamp the whole tree on it. I'm going to stamp it off to the side, just getting some of that. Well, actually, I do have the anti-static powder bag, which is what I used, but I also have an old sock filled with cornstarch, which is pretty much the same thing and works just as well and costs a lot less money. So, but it does make a mess. I have them both in the same little container off to the side there. So there I am, stamping down the tree. Off to the side. And what I am going to do now, because it is a pigment ink, is I am going to heat set that with some embossing powder. And there it is, and now it's time to put down the birds. One thing I learned recently, what I'm using here, and I think I'd show it to you, is the Quick Stick. It's the We Are Memory Keepers Quick Stick tool. Okay, I'm trying to think of what it was. Quick Stick tool. And it works very well with paper. I also have one of those like jewel picker tools, which I could never worked well for me. And I recently learned, and it makes sense, is that the Quick Stick tool is made for paper and it works really well with paper. And those other type of tools, like the jewel pick tools, which they use when they're doing nails and stuff, is better to use that if you're trying to pick up gems and sequins and things like that. So right now I'm just fussing with the different birds that I have cut out. They're usually they are all in blue and different shades of blue. So I was picking out which colors I wanted, and then I decided I also needed a bird in like a pretty blue glitter paper, which is what I'm off trying to find right now. Okay, I got that cut out. I had the birds all arranged, and then I was having trouble with my glue bottle, but everything has been fixed. And so now I'm just laying down my birds. As you can see, especially the one that I just laid down, the back side of it was dark. That's a double-sided paper I have of a sky. It's a 12 by 12. I have a few sheets of those. And one side is a blue cloudy sky, and the other side is a dark gray cloudy storm sky. And this is me explaining the Quick Stick and the difference between the two different types that I've discovered recently and why I've been having such problems. So there are the birds laid out, and now the one other thing to do is to do the sentiment strip and then to mat it and to get it on the card front. And the finished product. Thank you so much for stopping by. This is Karynjean from X Sleepers Crafts. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it's given you some ideas for your imagination to take you to some marvelous places. I'll see you next time.